Well, good morning again, everyone. Denise Cadman is the environmental specialist for the city of Santa Rosa. The position involves managing 1,500 acres of agricultural land irrigated with recycled water and natural area land in the lagoon of Santa Rosa. Planting creek corridors, removing invasive species, which might be some of you, conducting studies and performing long-term surveys on plants, birds, and mammals. An education program complements these efforts, including tours of the Laguna treatment plant. Denise grew up in the wilds of Rincon Valley and received her BA in secondary teaching credential and MA from the biology department of Sonoma State. She teaches at the SRJC as an adjunct faculty member in the life science department, in addition to working for the city of Santa Rosa. And she and her husband operate a draft horsepower family farm in the Laguna de Santa Rosa. Denise attributes her career in natural resource management to the love of bird watching. Please welcome Denise Cadman.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And just on a personal note, I so appreciate these community organizations, and I've had really lovely experiences with Rotarians. So thank you for what you do for our community. It's truly appreciated. I'm going to talk today about kind of a potpourri of water-related issues. And I wanted to just introduce City of Santa Rosa's newly renamed department. We just changed our name from the Utilities Department, which it's been for 30 years now, to the Water Department. Because water is what we do. And so our programs are, include water quality. So we have not only drinking water, but water use efficiency efforts. Storm water in creeks. So we have to protect water that runs off of the landscape and ends up in the creeks. And creeks may very well be impaired from previous historical use and need some help. And then also we treat sewage out of the Laguna treatment plant. And that's, of course, where I hail from. And I do a lot of tours at the Laguna treatment plant. And I'll tell you just a little bit about our treatment process. It is relevant because, of course, Sebastopol, as I'm sure you know, is in our sub-regional area. So any water that's going down an indoor drain within the city limits of Sebastopol is entering into the flow coming out to the Laguna treatment plant on Mono Road. And I do give a heck of a tour out there. It's surprisingly fascinating. So if you have a group or, just as an individual, you're interested in that, I brought some cards along and I'm happy to hand those out to make arrangements to facilitate the group. Okay, well, water. The good news is the environment does a really great job recycling water back to us. It's a critical natural resource. And water is, of course, cleaned as it moves through the hydrological cycle. It can be present in 3 different states of matter. So it can be a liquid at the surface in lakes and rivers and the oceans, or also in the soil or deeper underground where it's stored in aquifers as groundwater. It can be, of course, as a solid in frozen form, polar ice in glaciers, and also as a gas in the atmosphere. And also stored in living things. So we're mostly water. That's the #1 ingredient in our body. And of course it's critical to all the physiological processes that are going on. And we've got to have it for a whole bunch of different things. So the good news is it does get recycled. The bad news is it's a finite supply. So I like to tell the kids when they come out to the sewage treatment plant, the water you're drinking is dinosaur pee. It's the same old water that's always been here. It's the only water we've ever had. It's the only water we'll ever have. And it just keeps getting recycled back through that hydrological cycle. So that's the good news. But the bad news is it is a finite supply. And it's limited. So I'm sure, as you know, even though we live on this big blue planet, most of the water is not available to us because it's salt water. And we are down to 3% of the share, but it's less than that because you've got to make your deductions for what is frozen And if you make all the deductions for water we can't readily use, we're down to less than half of 1% of the global water resources that are both fresh and available. And that's to be shared among 7 billion people and growing. And also, we need to leave some water in ecosystems, right? Because plants and animals need water too. So we recognize that mostly when we're having water shortages, right? Benjamin Franklin said, you don't know the value of water until the well is dry. And we're on our 4th year of very dry conditions with no guarantees whatsoever that next year we'll supply more water. And that means that we have to be thinking about using water efficiently all the time, not just in times of shortages, because water falls unpredictably across the planet's surface. And we're relying on it for so many things, largely agriculture, which is the #1 user of water, especially in arid and semi-arid regions, all of our manufacturing and industrial processes, and of course for our own health and hygiene. Well, as I said, I work out of Laguna Treatment Plant, and just a quick word about that. We process an average of about 18 million gallons a day of sewage, any water that goes down an indoor drain in our sub-regional area. And that is from households and business and industry. So about 240,000 residents and 6,000 business and industry that send water to us. And we actually start our treatment before the sewage gets to our facility. And I'd just like to point out this slide because we're the users of the water, we're the polluters of the water. And so what we do actually makes a difference at the end of the day to how clean we can get the water when it's finished with treatment. So this is our Safe Med or pharmaceutical take-back program where we have a number of different drop locations all over the county where you can take unused, unwanted, and expired medications, pills, creams, whatever. And you can make sure then that those pills don't end up in the wrong place, which would mean, you know, if you put them in the garbage, they could be accidentally consumed by a kid or pet. And if you put them in the water, they become extremely hard to clean up. So we have a lot of programs in place, especially with our industrial dischargers, to make sure that things that we're not able to remove from the water don't come in the first place. And then once the water's on site, we have a multiple-step cleaning process. And the first step in the first cone there on the left is to settle out solids, which end up being digested anaerobically, and then ultimately used for land application and a composting program. So the name of the game here is to not think about sewage as a liability, but to think about it as a valuable resource. It's all ingredients that we can reuse. Well, most of sewage, over 99%, is actually water. And we want to reclaim that water. And so water goes on to step 2. The second cone shows you water that's had the bulk of solids removed. And that's our biological treatment. So we do just what nature does. We use microscopic living organisms to decompose and remove organic material from the water. And that they do a fantastic job. And you see the third cone then is after secondary treatment. That's our biological step. We do a tertiary step of treatment at Laguna Treatment Plant where we filter the water using anthracite coal. That removes the finest suspended solids as well as some potential pathogens. And we finish our treatment with UV light disinfection because at this point, what we're chiefly concerned about is potentially pathogenic bacteria or virus. And people will come in contact with the water as we finish our treatment and reintroduce it back into the hydrological cycle. So what we don't do is drink the water again right away. Now some places are doing this. Unfortunately, in Southern California, they did a big pilot program out of Orange County, and they unfortunately initially named it toilet to tap. Was not popular. So they went back to the drawing board and they did a lot of public relations. And they are now currently recycling about 70 million gallons of sewage a day back into the drinking water program. There's just no other source of water available. So the only source of water that's growing is the shadow of the supply, right? It's the water we've already used that needs to be used again sooner rather than later. So we would have to do additional treatments to get it up to potable standards, even though we do meet the current state and federal guidelines for drinking water quality. It's quite clean, but not considered potable water. So we returned it to the environment, and we have three choices. The first is the potential for winter discharge. We can release water out of our holding ponds, like here at Delta Pond, into a natural waterway, in this case the Laguna de Santa Rosa, that would flow onto the Russian River and out to the Pacific Ocean. But that's not a beneficial use because we're essentially turning our very clean fresh water back into salt water. So the city started a long time ago to look for 100% beneficial reuse. And the big program that got put into place starting back in the 1970s was a recycled water program for agricultural irrigation. We currently irrigate over 6,000 acres of mostly farmland, also recreational areas as well. And this is significant because it replaces the need to use potable water for the same purposes. So we can irrigate lots of pasture for dairy, hay production. You can grow anything you want with recycled water, including certified organic produce, lots of wine grapes in our system, and also some turf projects like ball fields and parks, like a place to play here, the golf course in Moore Park, all irrigated with our water from the recycled water program. And that's going to stay drinking water for drinking, and we're going to still be able to have our greenscapes even in a very dry year. But I can tell you, recycled water is in short supply this year too, so it's being rationed out. All users got a set amount at the beginning of the season. They can use it in whatever way they want to. They can use it all at once. They can sparse it out. They can take fields out of production if they choose to and put more down in certain zones, and that's what's currently happening. Because the majority of the water goes to the Geysers Recharge Project, so just quickly on that, we have this pretty unique geologic phenomenon here in the mountain straddling lake in Sonoma County. The Mayacamas has an unusual geology that allows liquid hot rock to come up unusually close to the Earth's surface. And any water then in the soil is turned into steam, and steam is captured and used in 20-some power plants to turn turbines to make a non-fossil fuel driven source of electricity. But the geysers were running out of steam. Water leaves the system faster and it can be replaced naturally by infiltration from rainfall or even catching the condensation as it moves through the power plants. So we added a terminal reservoir up the top of the mountains, and that water is now added to the injection that's going back deep underground, allowing the energy producers, primarily Calpine, to make more electricity. So with the water we send the geysers, they're able to make an additional amount of electricity, good for about 100,000 homes. So this is the largest geothermal area in the world and one of the largest producers of renewable energy in California. And we're happy to be part of that problem, that process, because it is a very beneficial reuse. Just thinking about water then, there are some problems associated with it. There are issues that we have to think about. One of them is that water falls unpredictably. So here is the Laguna treatment plant in the 2005-06 New Year's Day storm, where we were literally swamped by the Laguna in that storm. So we have this unpredictable timing and amount of water coming to us. Other problems associated with water are pollution. So we are considered at the treatment plant what's called a point source. You can literally point to the treatment plant and say, okay, they're releasing water back into the environment, and that water may not be clean enough. So we're going to regulate them to make sure that we meet minimum standards. So each point source has a NPDES, stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, tailor-made for them by their local water control board. And it will say exactly what can and can't be in the water. This is all part of the Clean Water Act of 1972 to basically bring all waterways in the United States up to the level where they are swimmable and fishable. Currently, only about 40% of our waterways actually meet that minimum criteria, so there's a lot of work to do. And most of that work comes from non-point sources. They come from the cumulative environment, and they may be from agriculture, or from urban runoff, recreational, or even our own homes. I mean, we found that one of the key ways to keep watersheds clean is just by picking up dog poop. And that the water that is contaminated at the surface may also move underground. So there's a conversation going on between surface water and groundwater. So the bottom of lakes and rivers are touching underground aquifers. They're connected to underground aquifers. So if something polluted comes off of the surface, it can end up underground. And that's critical because groundwater is our drinking water. That supplies the majority of people in this country, in the world, who drink water from the ground because, again, nature has a fantastic mechanism of cleaning and filtering water as it moves down through layers of sand and gravel. So I want to spend the rest of my time just talking about groundwater a little bit because it is so critical and there are big changes that are taking place right now. Okay, so one of the things about groundwater is you can overdraft your groundwater supplies. You can use more water, take out more than is being replaced. And when that happens, of course, the top of the aquifer, the water table, gets lower and lower and lower until all of a sudden people's wells don't reach it anymore. Okay, so this slide shows a picture of what is considered the fastest disappearing aquifer in the world. This is the High Plains Aquifer, also known as the Ogallala Aquifer. And it underlies 8 states, and it is disappearing at an alarming rate. This water is underground because at the end of the Pleistocene, 10,000 years ago, when the glaciers melted, that water went underground. So it's a one-shot deal. We don't have any more melting glaciers to restock this supply. So when it's gone, it's gone. And it's disappearing at an alarming rate because up until very recently, there's been limited amount of regulation surrounding groundwater use. Who has the rights to it? How do you report it? How do you manage a resource that is underlying multiple counties, cities, states, etc.? Okay, when you overdraft your groundwater, a couple of bad things can happen. For us in coastal regions, we can get saltwater intrusion. So if there's not a steady stream of fresh water flowing out through the aquifer into the ocean that allows brackish water to creep in, and it can creep in far enough to contaminate our drinking water wells. Also, when you remove water from the interstitial spaces, the pores in between rock and gravel, you remove the cushioning, so to speak, and land starts to sink. So probably most of you have seen this kind of now famous slide of what they call subsidence or sinking land. And this is occurring in the southern Central Valley, in the San Joaquin Valley. And this photograph was taken by the USGS showing how much the land has compressed. So you remove the water, There's nothing to fill those spaces anymore, so the land sinks lower and lower. Now, it's regional, so this is the worst spot in the southern Central Valley. But once you remove the water and subsidence occurs, you can't open those pore spaces back up again. So your capacity to store water underground becomes diminished and permanently. So subsidence is a very big problem. And in fact, we are having issues with subsidence in our own area. So this shows, of course, Sonoma County, and that brings me to my last topic, which is changing groundwater laws in our region. So last September, Governor Brown signed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And it was the first time in California's history that groundwater was going to be regulated. We were the last of the western states to have any form of groundwater management at all. Our laws go back to the gold rush, when basically the law said, if you own the property, you own the water under the property, and you can take as much as you want, for as long as you want. You don't need to report to anyone, you don't need to worry about your downstream neighbors or taking water out of creeks at the wrong time of the year or anything like that. So we are now part of an oversight, and we are in an area that's been designated by the state as a medium priority. So there's about 127 sub-basins that were recognized by the state as places to watch. And we're here in Santa Rosa Plain, of course, and Sonoma Valley, and also Petaluma Valley were included in those medium priority areas. It was established that we're in overdraft, our water tables are dropping, and in the case of Sonoma Valley, some saltwater intrusion coming in from San Pablo Bay, also in Petaluma, and in both Sonoma and Santa Rosa Plain, subsidence occurring. So what that means to us is we are working on a plan in the county that's being overseen by the Sonoma County Water Agency and other stakeholders that are going to have to put into place a sustainable management plan, meaning we're going to stop the overdraft and basically address the issues that are occurring as a result of no oversight to groundwater resources. And we have a whole bunch of years to get that in place. And if it isn't in place when the time comes, then the state has the ability to step in and take over. So we're kind of in a new era for water management, and I think that if anything good can be said about the drought, it's that it moved forward some ideas that I think were long overdue to be addressed. So we don't want to wait until things are broken to fix them. We want to be looking ahead. We want to make sure that we take care of our most important resource, water. And we want to make sure that we, have a strong and functioning greater ecosystem, which includes our water resources. That's why we value the quality of life here in Sonoma County. So, with that, I think I have time for a couple of questions if there are any. Yes?
Some quick ones. Any plan to get recycled water in that valley? Golf?
At this time, we have allocated all of our available recycled water. So we're not taking any new users into the system, with the exception of a new user who could install their own storage pond that we could winter fill, and then they could irrigate from that during the dry season.
Secondly, do you sell the water to the geysers?
We put in a contract in place that gives them the water for free. They pay for the pumping up the hill. but the water itself is not charged per gallon.
Does it make sense for you to re-inject your water into the aquifer that's challenged?
That is also being done in certain regions in the country, and the city of Santa Rosa did look into that a number of years ago, well before the geysers went in place. The geysers pipeline went in place in late 2003. And the public sentiment at the time was completely opposed to that, so they dropped that issue, and to my knowledge, it's not being looked at presently.
Generally, we all know that businesses, agriculture use a lot more water than individuals. That's a challenge for vineyards here. What do you see as the biggest issues that vineyards can do differently, and then also cattle, the meat industry is, well, that's the biggest use of water. What can be done there?
Well, there are a lot of new water sport technologies that are coming out. So, for example, there's a number of, moment by moment devices that can measure the trigger pressure, the amount of water pressure in a plant. Because a lot of times, I know as a gardener, you see leaves starting to droop, and you think, oh my gosh, I've got to put on some water. But that plant may actually not need water, so don't leave it to humans to judge, but actually use very smart devices that can give you moment-by-moment readings, and then good drip technology. So I think that we're seeing a lot of improvement in water use, water efficiency technologies, and I think that those will continue to come to us.
All right.
Thank you. Just feel free to come and ask.
Thank you. And we have a token of our appreciation for chocolate.
Oh my gosh, I love chocolate. That's lovely. Thank you so much.
There's also this. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you to draw a ticket.
Passport numbers 2571. The smart get smarter.
Looking for an ace.
Better than wine, I think.
I think that's it. Joe?
No joke?
No, Joe. That's it, the joke.
That's the joke.
And that's also you.
Where's mine?
Microphone for the man.
Okay, so this helicopter is flying around Seattle, and it's of course foggy and misty, and he loses his navigation. So he decides he sees this tall building, and he flies around, and he makes a sign, and the sign holds it up to the window, to the people inside the building. Where am I? So the people in the building are very helpful. They put a big sign, and they say, you're in a helicopter. So the pilot kind of smiles, looks down at his map, turns around, and heads to SeaTac and lands. So the co-pilot, Everland, said, now, how did you know where you were so you're able to get back when you made that sign? He said, well, I knew I was at Microsoft because technically they answered the question correctly, but it was useless.
And with that, let's happy trail in. I'll turn it off, of course.
Trails to you.
Keep smiling until then. Happy trails to you till we meet again.